Hello viewers, today I will be discussing a very important concept of political theory, that is procedural justice. It is an important dimension of justice. I am Dr. Surbhi Gupta, Assistant Professor in Police University, Jodhpur. Let us start the topic for today, that is procedural justice. Now before going on procedural justice, first of all I want to give a brief idea about what justice is. Etymologically, if we look, the word justice is derived from the Latin word junger, which means to bind or to tie together, or jus, a bond or tie, as a binding or as a combining idea. Justice combines together as a binding or joining idea. Justice combines together people in a right or a fair order of relationship that gives each person his due share of rights and duties, awards and punishments. So, the basic challenge before the dispensers of justice is how to allocate or how to provide for distribution of these goods in society. In this context, I would like to mention a very important definition of politics given by David Easton. He said politics is authoritative allocation of values in society. So, this is one of the very core function of politics, that is to distribute or to allocate the resources which are valuable. By valuable I mean resources which are scarce, they might be material or they might be spiritual, and for whose demands are more. So, what should be the method of allocation or distribution? This requires a web of decisions, a policy or procedures to be laid down to distribute or to authoritatively allocate those values in society. So, based on this we find that the contemporary scholars have two different opinions on the way how to deliver justice in society. The one stream of thought is procedural justice pertaining to this meaning, and the other stream of thought relating how to deliver justice or how to allocate values in society is substantive justice. Topic for today is procedural justice. Now, procedural justice is basically concerned with the fairness and the transparency of the process by which decisions are made and implemented. So, it can be seen as a contrast to the other form of justice, that is substantive justice or distributive justice or retributive justice or restorative justice. So, now let us begin with procedural justice. Supporters of procedural justice hold that it is necessary to determine a just procedure for the allocation of goods or social advantages in the society, that is status, power, wealth, opportunities, honors. If the procedure of distributing or of arriving at decisions to distribute or to find a method of authoritative allocation of these advantages or these resources are fair, then the outcome will be automatically just and fair. So, according to them, means justify the ends. Their ultimate focus is on the procedure, on the impartiality, on the fairness of the rule of law or of the legal procedure. They believe that if the method, the procedure or of arriving at distribution, at delivering, at making rules and implementing decisions in fair, then nobody should question about its outcome, whether the recipients are really morally deserving or they really need it, or they have the merit enough to be the beneficiary of this. Their entire focus is that the responsibility of the state is not to find out who needs what, and besides this, there is no actually a uniform or a scientific theory also to arrive at such decisions. So, what best a state can do to deliver justice is to be fair enough in its procedure, in its implementation. And the champions of procedural justice have tried to explain it beautifully with an analogy of race, that is a race competition. What they said is that when we see in a competition of race, what is just, how can we say a race competition is just? If Justice demands that if every competitor runs the same distance, starts from the same line, and nobody do any kind of cheating, or nobody jumps the line or enjoys any kind of unfair advantage, be in term of using performance enhancing drugs or by manipulating the judges, and the judges at the same time have those who are adjudicating or judging the race are impartial, and so on. If the rules of the game are fair enough, if every competitor as well as the judger, they does their work impartially without any cheating, then it is not the business of the those who are looking at this, that whether the one who wins morally deserves to win or not. So, I would like to illustrate this with the lines by Norman Barry. He said, procedural justice is exemplified in competitions such as races. A fair race is not one in which the person who wins morally deserves to win, but one in which there is no cheating, nobody jumps the gun or has an unfair advantage through the use of drugs. So, it very well brings out what we mean by procedural justice, or what are the expectations of those who support their claims for procedural justice. This view can also be, we find that procedural justice is very much similar to formal justice or legal justice. Now, legal justice primarily means justice according to law. They does not question whether the law is just or unjust, whether it is good or bad, whether it is fair or unfair. They just believe that whether the law has been administered properly, that they are solely concerned with the efficacy of the law, not with the purpose of the law. Their main focus is that whether the justice has been administered, the principles of administration of justice are according to the prevalent law or not. So, in this sense, justice, procedural justice has nothing to do with the purpose of the law. They just believe in the formal or in a fair, impartial justice according to law, according to the procedure established by law. We find this kind of justice in Indian Constitution also. We have Indian Constitution makers have used the word just procedure established by law in place of justice, due process of law. Now, what is the difference between due process of law and procedure established according to law? Procedure established according to law means that there will be justice if, first, if the legislative body itself is valid and is competent to do or deliver make laws, and other when they have actually subscribed to the law on paper. They are not concerned like due process of law, the champions of due process of law, they say that law has to be fair and just. They believe that it has to ensure, due process of law also means that they have to ensure that law has to be fair and just. So, they are concerned with the substance of the law, but those who support procedural justice, they are not concerned with the substance of the law. They are concerned with the procedure, that whether the procedure established by law has been followed in letter and spirit. So, our article 21 of the Indian Constitution also says that nobody should be deprived of life and liberty except according to the procedure established by law. So, everything is valid in case the procedure, the law is actually followed in letter as well as in spirit. So, this is the actually the litmus test for any kind of justice of those who believe in procedure established according to law. Another close relation of procedural justice is found in with the tradition of liberalism. You know that liberalism, as I have already delivered in one of my lecture, that liberalism is closely related to capitalism or free market economy. They consider that free market economy should be the basic principle of organizing a society, or should be the governing principle of any society. But why do they support such kind of principle? Because they have innate faith in the wisdom of human being. They believe if there is a individuals should be left free in the open competition, whereby everything is governed through market forces of supply and demand. in this situation what will happen, that it will bring out the best in every individual and will overall increase the efficiency and productivity of the society and contribute to social progress. They believe that in an atmosphere of non-intervention, the self-interest of individuals will interact and will bring out the best which for them, for individual as well as for the society as a whole. So, the same way the champions or the notion of procedural justice, they believe that function of justice is just to leave individuals or to regulate the mutual relations between individuals and groups in the same way as the market economy or the market principle works. So, they should be governed in the same way as market economy, because human relations in this situation are actually, it is based on natural spontaneous human order, and there should be no any artificial agency to interfere and to make any such kind of changes in that natural order. And the responsibility of the state is just to hold the ring for the competition. It is not concerned with actually finding out the each and every individual human needs and propensity. The best way is to make sure that the rules of the game, or that like for example, they believe freedom of contract, it is the mainstay of them. That is, they have to just ensure that the rules of game are followed in a fair manner, and no individual or group would oppress another by force or fraud. I would again repeat this very important statement, that they believe that the responsibility of the state is just to hold the ring of the game. That is just to ensure that nobody suppresses or no individual or group would oppress another by force or fraud. After that, whatever happens is there is actually is there what they deserve, morally deserve, or what is in their destiny. So, the freedom of contract is the mainstay of procedural justice. Procedural justice, I will again clarify that it treats that the rules of market economy are the model rules of behavior. It holds that market mechanism creates necessary conditions for the most efficient use of resources, and any artificial social policy designed to disturb this process will lead to wastage of rare material and human resources. From this follows one another important line of thought, that is formal equality of all individuals. That is, procedural justice repudiates, it totally rejects any kind of discrimination, whether it is guaranteed or warranted or not, whether it might be for the upliftment of any particular section of the society. They totally believe in absolute equality. They are not concerned with the desert or with the need or with the merit. So, procedural justice repudiates all discrimination between human beings on ground of race, caste, sex, religion, color, and accepts equal dignity and moral worth for all human beings. So, from here till now what we have got, understood from procedural justice is, number one, that it is just concerned with the procedure, not with the outcome of the justice. Number two, it is very closely related with legal justice, that is justice according to law or procedure established by law. Number three, it believes in formal equality of all individuals without any discrimination, no matter how important that discrimination might be positively required for overall social progress. And fourth, that it is closely related to the tradition of liberalism or market economy. So, I have already told you that it does not question whether a particular law is right or wrong. So, now I will proceed to the important statements made by the supporters of procedural justice. In this regard, I would like to quote Alf Ross, who in his work on law and justice, he argued that justice consists in an efficient administration of law, and that it should not be tested on some imaginary moral values, because all these ideals, moral values are actually utopia, and there is no scientific method to arrive at such moral conclusions or on such judgments. Again, one important scholar, Morris Ginsburg, in his On Justice in Society, has elucidated further that Rawls accepts what may be called the formal principles of justice as a basis of law. The notion of a legal order implies that decisions shall be made not arbitrarily but in accordance with general rules, and most importantly that these general rules shall be correctly, that is impartially, applied. To understand procedural justice better, I would like to draw a distinction between procedural justice and the absolute of it, that is the contrary version of procedural justice is substantive justice, or what we call as distributive and socio-economic justice. Supporters of substantive justice argue that the allocation or distribution of goods among various sections of the society itself should be just. That is their primary issue. The procedure for making such allocation is a secondary issue for them, which can be adjusted suitably to meet the requirements of just distribution. Substantive justice is coterminous with distributive justice and socio-economic justice. They have mechanism of affirmative action and positive discrimination. So, what substantive justice is concerned about is that the end result should be justified, that is to whom they are delivered, they should be actually deserving of that. They are not concerned with the procedure, and for that they believe that in case there is a necessary correction or modification is required in the procedure itself, it should be done, because sometimes we find that in India, for example, we have introduced the concept of positive discrimination, we call it as affirmative action or reservation also. Why we have discriminated, why we have introduced this concept? Because for example, we find that there were certain sections of the society like scheduled caste and scheduled tribes who have historically been subjective to a lot of injustice in the society, and now to correct that historical or to redress that their historical grievances, the society or the state is entitled to discriminate positively in favor of them. It is not to actually provide them some special advantages, it is to bring them to a level whereby they can actually enjoy the benefits of equality of opportunity. So, some discrimination are, all discriminations are not bad. According to them, some discriminations are good and they are warranted by social conditions of the vulnerable sections. So, they believe, and we find that it is very closely, it is related to the principle of socialism or the welfare state or social justice. If we imagine in today's time, if we actually believe only in procedural justice and cut the welfare functions of the society, then there will be lot of injustice or there will be lot of anger, frustration among the minds of the common people, and they will believe that society or state is not doing justice to them. So, we can relate the concept of substantive justice with the present day social, the welfare state or present day socio-economic justice, whereby there is redistribution or there is a retributive transfer of the resources in society. So, we find that substantive justice is a progressive idea, unlike we find this procedural justice was a conservative idea, it is a progressive idea. The aim is to transform society for the realization of certain human values. The traditional view of justice has given way to the modern idea of social justice. They seek to transform existing social conditions to eliminate injustice in society. The main problem of social justice is to decide an appropriate allocation of the advantages that are available or that can be secured through the instrumentality of the social organization. That is how state can be used as an instrument or an agency or a tool for the welfare of the people and for delivering justice. Now, I will again come to procedural justice, that who were the champions of procedural justice. This is very important because sometimes in exam the question is asked who are the champions of the procedural justice, or they are actually also the supporters of liberal individualistic view also. So, you can resemble their opinion with both the thoughts. The exponents of procedural justice include Herbert Spencer, F. A. Hayek, Milton Friedman and Robert Nozick. It can be seen that these exponents are also champions of liberal individualistic view. So, please keep in mind these 4 names: Herbert Spencer, Friedman, Nozick and Hayek. Now, to begin with Herbert Spencer. Herbert Spencer, he was an English philosopher who sought application of the principle of natural science to social organization. Spencer subscribed to the principle of the struggle for existence and survival of the fittest as the guiding principle of social evolution. In this process of evolution, the state has a very limited role to play, and that is the function of protection, administration of law of equal freedom. The state should not assume any other function nor otherwise interfere with the process of natural evolution. So, according to Herbert Spencer, he believed in the principle of social organization on the basis of survival of the fittest or the struggle for the existence. According to him, the state has actually very limited role to play. The state should not come to help the poor, handicapped, the needy, because it will interfere with the natural process of social evolution or with the law of natural evolution. If the state provides help to the weak, the imprudent and the incapable, it will amount to depriving the strong, the capable of their due share and of their due position. So, Herbert Spencer very closely related procedural justice with the view that the state has just to ensure that there is no force of fraud and the rules of game are played in a natural manner following the theory of natural evolution, and the state should not apply any kind of principle of family ethics whereby you try to actually protect the undeserving. We all know that joint family system works on this principle only, that is from each according to his abilities and to each according to his need. But this principle actually interferes with the process because it will actually be rewarding the undeserving and punishing the more contributor or the more capable one. Another important contributor to procedural justice is F.A. Hayek. Hayek suggested that the state should positively promote competition and ensure that market is not reduced to an instrument of distributive justice. Hayek defines, he argues that state should positively promote competition and should not make market itself as an instrument of distributive justice. Any attempt to create material equality among different individuals is bound to involve coercion, which would deprive them of their freedom. So, Hayek was a strong supporter of open competition because for him individuals differ in their abilities and in their talent, and if you try to actually promote equality, or if you try to create some kind of formal or material equality or distributive equality, then it will actually cannot be countered unless and until you try to coerce an individuals. So, for them it is against the principle of liberalism. So, according to Hayek, if you try to deliver justice by balancing the principles of liberty and equality as is widely understood, it will actually require some part of coercive powers, use of coercive powers of the state, which should not be done. So, we find that Hayek is a supporter of a minimal state, or he has just given the role of night watchman or a police functions to the state, and state should not enter or should not actually assume the functions of a welfare state and in distributing goods and services to the people. It should just be concerned with the open competition, and the rule of competition should be fair enough. Friedman. Another important supporter was Friedman. He eulogized competitive capitalism as an essential condition of freedom, and he was against all measures of human welfare and security. So, he also believed in a competitive market economy and supported capitalism. He believed that the government should be brought to picture or should perform only those functions which the market is unable to do or which requires or involves a lot of cost. In that situation only the state should actually come into picture. So, he also in the same way supports the situation or supports the situation of open competition and free race. He argues that in order to maximize the freedom, government should be allowed to handle only those matters which cannot be handled through the market itself. The most important supporter which is likely associated with procedural justice is Robert Nozick. Please keep this in mind that in his work or in his book Anarchy, State and Utopia, he has very beautifully brought out the procedural theory of justice. Robert Nozick argues that individual property holdings are just if they are a consequence of fair acquisition or even transfer. This means that no force or fraud should have been used in the acquisition of the property. So, he has used the concept of property to explain his concept of procedural justice. He said that every individual has certain entitlements, and if he has acquired those by virtue of acquisition, just acquisition, whereby he has put his labor or he has actually earned it, that is he has rightfully acquired it, or it might be transferred to him in a through a just manner, then all such kind of entitlements are just and fair, and if the state wants or attempts to redistribute that property to others, it is totally immoral. It violates the basic principle of justice. So, he is against the principle of redistributing property and transferring the resources. He even went to, he has gone to the extent of saying that if the state imposes taxes on the rich people, it will actually amount to it is actually immoral, it is unethical because it will amount to depriving the real earners of the wealth of their due share. So, he supported minimal state, police state. He has said that when a part of tax is imposed on the rich is spent on the welfare of the poor, it is immoral, it is akin to forced labor. In Nozick's view, it involves using abilities and efforts of one section as a means to other ends. It involves involuntary transfer and therefore it violates the moral principle. So, this way he has given legitimacy to the minimal state and has totally or outrightly rejected the function of a welfare state by way of redistributing or correcting the social inequalities in the society through transfer of the property and resources in the society. So, please keep this in mind that Robert Nozick was a champion of the right to property, and any such kind of entitlement is just if it is through fair acquisition or through fair transfer. The last but not the least, John Rawls. John Rawls also actually has claimed himself to be the champion of procedural justice. He believes that Rawls has actually in his book Theory of Justice given a very strong defense of the idea of justice based on the basic tenets of procedural justice. Rawls said, or he has evolved a unique methodology for arriving at a unanimous procedure of justice. He has envisaged an original position by abstracting the individual from their particular social and economic circumstances, by placing individual behind a veil of ignorance where they are supposed to be deliberating as rational agents. So, according to him, he believes that once certain principles of justice are arrived at, then any such kind of or any distribution resulting from that procedure will be justified or will be just. So, he believed that if an individual places himself in a hypothetical situation whereby he assumes himself to be the least advantageous, so any such kind of methodology catering to the least advantageous will be just, and that procedure will be justified. So, I would sum up the theory of procedural justice in a way that it believes It is actually coterminous with legal justice, with formal justice, with the fair and just procedure, and it is closely related to market economy, whereby it has given the state minimal or the least role to engage itself in redistributing the resources. But there are heavy criticism leveled against procedural justice also, because in this way, if you are allowed to operate the society on the basis of free competition, then some section of the people might be forced to live in situation of abject poverty or in a subhuman conditions, and state is actually an agency of human welfare. So, state should get away or uplift itself from just following the procedures to delivering the justice in the society. Justice requires that a provision should be made for meeting some minimum needs of all human beings, irrespective of their individual contribution to society. And the procedural justice theorists do not make a distinction between production and distribution. They believe that the state has no authority to interfere in the matter of individual entitlements, and whatever an individual get by way of application of fair procedure and fair law is just, whether it would be unjust to a large section of the society who are in dire need of state help. Thank you.